Hello friends, Jeff here from Squadron and welcome to Squadron Facebook Live. Today we're going to do it a little bit different because I got a special guest, Adam Coleman, for the ones... well, first of all, welcome to Squadron, Adam. Glad you're here. For the ones that might not know him, I'm going to ask him to tell a little bit about himself. So, okay, Adam, who are you and where do you come from and what do you do?
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name's Adam Coleman. Jeff, thanks for that. I guess I've been a modeller now for coming up to nearly 50 years, which is always shocks me. But and you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from South Texas. No, that's not kind of like that. But
that's what I keep saying.
I know.
Sometimes I get away from it.
Yeah. Sometimes you can do it. I know. They're originally from Hobart, Tasmania, on the other end of the world, and that's where I got my modelling start, I guess, Jeff. And been doing it ever since. So really excited to be here. I'd heard about Squadron over the years, of course, and being a customer before and then through IPMS, and fantastic to be here today.
Mm-hmm. Great. You also said that you were connected to the North Dallas chapter of the IPMS. You're the vice president there.
Yep.
Could you tell a little bit how you get in that position?
Absolutely. So I guess wherever I've lived around the world, I've always been involved in modelling, modelling clubs of all sorts and organisations. But IPMS is really the one. And the North Texas chapter was, of course, the first chapter of IPMS, which began right here in Dallas. And by being in that chapter, it has a very unique membership, a very long history and rich history, of course, with modelling. Of course, when I moved to DFW Metroplex, as we call the area around Dallas-Fort Worth, I sought out a club to go to, another chapter, and ended up there. And of course, with all of these things, it's a lot of volunteerism as well, and helping with things. And then at some point, you get nominated maybe for a position. So I'm currently the vice president of the chapter.
It's what Adam just mentioned. I don't know if a lot of you guys know that, but the IPMS actually was established in England in 1963, and it was called the BPMS, the British Plastic Modeler Society. So there was a guy here, I think his name was Jim Sage, and he was, I think he was into life insurance, whatever, but he apparently, after hours, he was really in dealing to import some hard-to-get kits from either England or Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So he was already trying to get some kits in here and then sell it here in the United States. So he was corresponding with the BPMS, and so they sent them some flyers and or some little like letters or inserts. So every time he got some kits from England, he put like a little insert into the kit and sent it to the people over here. So eventually people started to get interested in the BPMS. But then it got so busy that he finally said, well, maybe I can start a chapter. And he actually, the first chapter in the IPMS USA was here in Dallas. And he also convinced the British to remove the B from British and make it put an I in the spots in the place, so it became the International Plastic Modeler Society. But it's a little known fact that actually the very first chapter here was in Dallas. So anyway, so eventually, how did you actually get into modeling? Because you had a little story there, like your dad or grandfather or something.
Yeah, I had I've got an uncle back in Australia who, when I was a little kid, of course, 6 or 7 years old, I would be fascinated by all of the boxes of kits that he had and all of the books and ultimately a lot of the actual finished models. And of course, these things are pretty imaginative and exciting to look at, and particularly as everyone knows, the box art on some of the old kits was just fantastic. So I remember my first kit, it was a blister pack ME262 from Airfix. Loved that. In fact, I bought a couple of blisters along today. I just, like most of us would have, certainly in Europe and in Australia, you grew up going to the newsagent, as you called it then, or the newsstand, right? And hanging on the wall would be one of these, and for, I think it was Australian 45 cents at the time, you picked up this kit of wonderment. Of course, the box art sold you, and off you went with your instructions. If you haven't seen any of these around underneath the flap here is the instructions, and really great kits. They still hold up well to this day. Of course, like anything which is old in the modelling world, there's some criticism about accuracy and stuff, but at the end of the day, when you're a kid, it's all about fun, right?
Absolutely.
So, the blister packs were great. I guess, with my uncle, I would sort of learn a few words like detail and scale and understanding accuracy and those sort of things, which to a 7 or 8 year old is pretty interesting at the best of times. And of course you start appreciating better kits and better made kits. So I grew up again going into some things like this by Fujimi, their World Armour series, which was just fantastic. And as you know, the box art is phenomenal and it tells a story in itself. So again, these were to me sort of the top end, the more complicated ones after the Airfix. And then of course I remember in about 1974, again my uncle coming to me and saying, "Oh look, I've got this kit, it's made by this company called Matchbox." And I thought, okay, I know what Matchbox cars are, everybody knows that. And sure enough, they produce a fantastic series of plastic kits with different colours of sprue. And so anyway, I just bought one of those along here, and everybody knows these Matchbox kits. But as you know, the series is pretty much out of production now, unless it's by Revell. But there's a few nuances about the kits which were exceptional for their time. And of course, they had the diorama on the back, which again created the imagination. The multicoloured plastic, the decal options. These were all things which were again another notch above, say, the earlier things like that. And of course, this particular kit, the Hanamag, is unique in its boxing by itself because it was released originally with the swastika on the hood when it came out on the market, which of course meant that right away, when they realised at least the error that they'd made marketing it, they had to take that off. So this is one of the very collectible aspects of modelling as well, was kits like this, which were unique, and I happen to have a couple of these, I admit, and I've got a couple without the flag, but very, very unusual and a little bit rare as well.
I didn't even know about this. And like me, Adam is actually trying to recapture his youth. I explained that a little bit a couple weeks ago, I think, where models like us who have been in the hobby for quite some time now, we start to go back to our youth and try to recapture it by buying all kits. So I was glad I was not the only nut that was doing this. So I found somebody like a soulmate. Who is that? Hold on.
Soulmate?
David? I can't read.
Come
on. I'm sorry, I'm blind as a bat. So
we have a couple gentlemen trying to say hello.
Okay.
So we have David, Hector, William, Mark, Brad, and Adam.
Okay, David, Hector, William, Mark, Brad, and Adam. Glad that you tuned in. I'm sorry I can't read that far. We need to get like some sort of a marker or something. Brilliant.
All right, we'll figure it out. It's and then as I've got older, of course, I've started to turn my spare room into almost a hypothetical model shop, right? And I have them all stacked out. I have them on an Excel spreadsheet and the value. But then I got into collecting them because obviously, as you all know, we all collect and not just build. And I bought in one today that I wasn't sure if Jeff had seen before, but
this is new to me.
Yeah, so this is the one of the things that's really collectible. This is an Airfix SAM 2 missile in 72nd scale. Interestingly enough, there's 3 Airfix kits which are very, very rare because the moulds have been broken and they'll never be made again. I have 2 of them, but one of them is this SAM 2 missile set, which was only released in 73, 74, 75. It was reboxed one more time, slightly different, as you know, with the logo, but very, very collectible. And on say eBay and those places, it can be found for into the 3 figures range. Fantastic little kit. I don't think I'll ever build it. I'll look at it, but as we do with a lot of our kits, that's the way it goes. But kit collecting is pretty phenomenal itself. So while I'll always build, the dragons and the DMLs and all that stuff, and the model collects, I always want to look and touch and open them and check out the other kits.
Yeah, well, that's where we see how we were talking a little bit before that, how the model industry has evolved, from way back the basics to now, where you can get almost anything. So now, as far as the coming back to the IPMS, do you have an idea how many members you guys have, or what's still the chapter, the original chapter? How many?
Yeah, it's about 118. The last count that I saw. Yeah. Of course, there's IPMS chapters all over the US, of course, and around the world. There's a very large one in Houston, very large one in San Antonio, and also in Austin. So it goes without saying. But we meet, once a month on a Sunday, 2 or 3 hours or so. We do some good fundraising stuff, and as many of you would know, we have a pretty fantastic contest called Scale Fest every year in June, which brings in many people into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The location's great, and of course it's known for its really quality kits, but also fantastic vendors, so we can collect some more, right?
Collection. I always say, like modelers, I rather, like, as far as a business, you always like it better when they collect, so they don't build it and then they don't complain. So collecting is a big part, and we are all guilty of that. But you never know what kind of a gem you have. I wish I kept all the stuff that I had, because these days, you buy a model kit, and once you walk out the door, it values in price. But if you sit on it long enough, you might make some money. Now, to become an IPMS member, what do you need to do, and how much is it? Because I've been in the IPMS off and on, even in Belgium. I was a couple times in the club, and then I let it lapse. So, but what's the current rate now to become a member?
I don't know. It gets discounted for 1, 2, or 3 years as well, but it's very affordable. I can't throw a number out there, but it's very affordable. And then also too, depending on the chapter, there might be a chapter dues or whatever. It just depends on how that chapter raises its money and its funds. I've been in 3 or 4 in the US, I guess, and all of them have operated the same but different in many ways as well. I was in a chapter in North Carolina, in Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, the home of the airborne. And that was a very, very, very fun group of people, because you had a lot of current and former military people that were just excited to build models, and they'd pay any money to join the club and get into it. So it varies, but the North Texas one doesn't have a membership due locally, so it just pays the national dues, that's it. And that gets you discounts and things of that nature as well, plus all your magazines every year is what that come through, and again, different access prices for the national convention. So.
Now I see that your the samples that you brought, they're like all 72nd, 76th scale. Now, is that the only thing you built, or what? Or your?
I ventured into, as most people outside of the US know, when you're in Europe and certainly in Australia and Japan, in the 70s and 80s, 72nd, 76 scale was the way to go, unless you got into ships. And of course, you come to the US and 48 scale aircraft show up, right?
Yeah, like where we come from, they only have small houses, so you're limited in what you have to, what you can build actually. Remember way back, like you said, 72nd scale was the way to go, and I think most companies tend to that, like Airfix, Frog. What else is there? Matchbox. Most of their stuff was 72nd scale, because that's the way to go. I don't know if it had anything to do with the space, but that's sure. But you're always was interested in armor. Is that a special?
I'm a bit eclectic
for that.
Yeah, I always liked armor. I think the box art really got me into it. I think there was something that could be said for, like in some of these, the emotion on the characters, on the people's faces, or maybe the scene, and then in many cases too, how it tied its way back to history. So when you were building something, of course, you could build it back as it was historically, and there's a bit of imagination to free thinking to make it work that way. And then of course, as you all know, we have huge book collections that we acquire through this hobby, right?
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to bring up, because again, last week I talked a little bit about books, about how I got into, how do I prefer books over the computer, how I like to collect books. But it wasn't always that easy. Was it the same thing in Australia? Because I remember when I was a kid, I couldn't get anything. There's not even an article or a magazine or even a book. I just had to just get it out of thin air, or what was what's the word? Was given to me as far as instructions. There was no, long story short, there was no research material, there was no reference material available back then. Was it the same in Australia?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the best resource that was available back then was the Squadron signal books. It's kind of ironical that I'm here today. I used to remember as a little kid sitting up night reading a Squadron book and seeing the address of 1115 Crowley and thinking it must be this magical place far away, and here I am sitting here today. I feel like I've come full circle now 45 years later. But you know, they were always great books. But I mean, as you know, with the development of technology and printing now, you know, I bought some books from here recently, a Panther book, which was just phenomenal. I mean, it's breathtaking, right?
Yeah,
What's available.
You sometimes don't know where they get their pictures from, because especially in the older days when you see the books, some of the images were repetitive. You know, some author got the same pictures than in another book, and you really had to be careful when you bought a book from somebody and then you bought another book about the same subject but from a different author. You have to be real careful that you didn't get the same images. But now more and more, I think there is more with the entrance of social media, with the internet, the computer, that there's a lot more available. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more coming. So it was not always that easy, but now these days, when you want something, it's out there. You know, you just can basically build or paint whatever you want. Somewhere, somehow, there is a picture out there. Now you told me a little bit that from where you came from originally, where your basically your parents and your grandparents, they came from Poland.
Right, correct. Yeah, half the family is Polish.
And then you told me a little story about your grandfather being one of the Lancers.
I've got very unique. I've got a grandfather that was a former cavalryman in the Polish Army in World War II. Saw combat, of course, and I was fortunate enough to talk to him before he passed away, and he told me good stories about how they trained and things that get left out of the books, if you know what I mean. And really, really exciting to hear that. I still even have some photos of him when he was at NCO school as well, actually, and he's a junior NCO, and there's instructors around him showing him something. And I even have one actually of him on one of his horses. A very impressive horse it is too. It's a seriously, I don't know how many hands it is, but it's a big cavalry horse.
Because it's a well-known fact that, especially about the Polish cavalry, there's always this myth and this, but it's actually true. I mean, those guys were out there and they just fought with whatever was at hand. So, I think. Get anything else?
Yeah, we have a couple more shout-outs. So we have Brad, says he's a friend of Adam's.
Oh,
from
I know which Brad
California
that is.
and Texas. He sends his regards.
Fantastic. Hey, Brad.
Frank Landris said, tear it up.
Tear it up. Okay.
Yeah, Frank should come back, yes.
Absolutely.
Wonderful speaker. I didn't bring anything Swedish, Frank. I just want to let you know.
Bob definitely agrees that Squadron is absolutely magical.
Well, that's good.
And William Leet from Brockport, New York also says hello.
Hello, William. I'm glad you tuned in. So, I think we're about wrapping it up right now. You got anything added to?
No, I just want to say, you know, I always look at these things, and because I build a lot of the older kits, and I buy the new stuff too. But there's something nostalgic about building the old stuff, and I know that in some cases they're not accurate. I follow all that, right? But that's not the point, right? The point is to have fun with it, and if you want to have a serious build, you can have a serious build with one of these, just as seriously as you can with something, you know, brand new and off the shelf. So I mix it up either way, you know, and I look for that as sort of part of the spike every time to keep me invigorated with it. So
now, one last question. There's a lot of diversion about when you talk about clubs. Some people like it, some people hate it. Do you think it's worth to join a club like the IPM is? Do you think that you can learn something? Like, let's say that there's a lot of novices watching now. Would you advise it to join a club?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the minimal cost that it is to do it, you know, I was thinking just last night I was working on a 72nd scale Kettenkrad. Can you imagine how big that is?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was going through it, that every touch of weathering that I was doing, every bit of paint that I was doing to it was what someone had shown me.
Oh, okay.
Right? And I learned from that. And I don't know the difference if I'd done it without that or not, but I certainly know that it was better and I've got more fun out of it that way. Okay. Definitely. And of course you meet people, and of course, just as you saw there, you know, many of my friends around the world. all to do with modelling, and sort of
Yeah,
the camaraderie comes with it.
that's true. You're sometimes amazed how many people you know by doing this hobby, because everybody thinks, hey, we're all nerds, you know. But you learn a lot of people, and you make a lot of contacts, and sometimes you just have to reach out, and help is just right around the corner. So yeah, to his point, also if you're just wanted to get back into the hobby, if you're starting into the hobby, I think it's advisable that you join a club. Doesn't have to be necessarily the IPMS, but I would advise if it's close by and it's I would definitely check it in. Like you said, for the minimal price, it's just definitely worth it, because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of people that are ready to help. So now we're because basically people don't care what I have to say, so they're always waiting for the raffle.
Okay, yes.
Now,
so I always wait for it too.
I saw that a few times. So I think having a guest like you makes it a little bit easier for me, because it's always interesting to hear somebody else's story, and it's so funny that, or actually so ironic that when we talked before this, and you were telling your story about how as a kid, what you were limited to, or the things you had to work with, it's similar to mine. So a lot of the guys from our generation, and you're at least 10 years younger than I, but a lot of the guys like generation between 40s, 50s, 60s, they went through the same kind of I can call it hardships than we did.
Right.
But it's also nice to see the whole evolution of modeling from like just a simple frog or airfix kit all the way to where we are now with all the accessories. So
Yes.
it keeps getting better. And again, for the people that are out there that are watching and that are planning to start into the this is the best hobby you can do, and it's very entertaining, and you learn as you go.
Before we do the drawing, we do have a couple of questions coming up.
Sure.
So first of all, what's the biggest challenge for the future of modeling?
Well, the biggest challenge is, of course, rejuvenation. We need to get more young kids in there, and it's very hard these days to convince them to sit down for 5 minutes and look at a plastic model. I mean, it's a well-known fact, I think, that the hobby is getting gray. You know, we're all getting older, and we just build on what we already knew. But for younger kids, or to get into this, to really take the time to build something, I think that's the biggest challenge, to get more young people into the hobby, and I think you agree with that.
Absolutely, yeah. There's kit manufacturers now, particularly some of the Japanese brands, that are making really, we'll call it kid-friendly stuff, right? And so they're doing those things, and I think that it's just got to get out there. But I mean, I think maybe another challenge is the bridge between the generations, right?
True.
So if you can get fathers and sons, or uncles and nephews, that kind of thing. And I say we use male context, but I've seen some pretty fantastic female models too.
Oh yeah,
that do some work too. So I mean, it's not. I shouldn't put it that way. But getting more people into it is I think is pretty straightforward. It's just that you'll find that somebody will find something that sparks their interest, and I think that's the way to go. But I'm pretty optimistic actually. When I see the quality of some of the kits now, it's getting pretty exciting.
Something is changing, because, and I think I wrote that in an article, or I mentioned it before, that whatever those kit manufacturers producing right now, I see an upward trend. Also in the latest IPMS convention in Chattanooga, I saw a lot more people that stayed away for a long time, and they start to come back, and I see a lot of different faces, younger faces. So hopefully this will keep growing, and then eventually we can turn this around and make the best of it. But on the other hand, to your point, you see a lot of kit manufacturers producing interesting stuff, and producing a kit is not cheap. So maybe they're onto something we don't know yet, but hopefully, I think we're leveled off in the downward path. I think we're slowly but steadily gaining ground again, and that's a good thing for the future and for the hobby.
All right. We also would like to know, you build on the go. How do you manage that? Do you have any tips for scale modelers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I travel a lot, and pre 9/11, I used to build in the on the aircraft with my little hobby knife, and I'd
On the aircraft?
on the aircraft, yeah, using the scent-free glue and stuff, and I would build an aircraft or a tank while I was flying somewhere. And if you had a 3 or 4 hour flight, there was a lot you could do in that time, right? And always had people fascinated by that. Of course, the flight attendants would be, particularly if it was a plane, they wanted to know what that was going on. I enjoy that. But then when I go on the road, I've got a little road kit as well, which is designed for that, and small little tackle box which is has small compartments in it, and then usually end up for the armour people, I guess, building sub-assemblies and things like that, and having those ready. So it's very portable. That's a great thing about the hobby.
So you do travel a lot still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Great. Carlton Boykin says hello, and also would like to know, Adam, do you like to paint your tanks in light or dark camo?
Good question. I've often thought that stuff that's lighter, you can just extract a bit more detail out.
You like, talking to you, you like the Africa Corps, isn't it?
Yeah. Africa Corps stuff with, anything Dunkelgelb or certainly the RAL, I forget the number for Africa Corps, was exciting. But I think you can, get, with the right product, get fantastic detail. But anything like that, which is a lighter colour, is good. If it's too dark, it's too dark. And sometimes when you're competing in model contests, as many of you know, sometimes you look at a kit and you think the scale, that is way too dark.
Yeah.
Right? But, whoever it is felt it was right, and that's good, and it's not like you're judging them.
As long as they're happy.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
But yes, to your point, when you, I see what you're saying. I mean, when you paint a model in lighter colors, it's a little bit more tricky and a little bit more difficult too, because because everything is visible. But you can get so much more out of it, much more color nuances or weathering, and especially when you weather something, it's easier to weather on a lighter platform than on a darker. And but then also you have to do a lot more work too to make it look right.
Yes, it's all obvious. It's all out there.
Great. Got 2 more questions for Jeff, and then we can move on to the drawing. I know everybody's in suspense. That's everyone's favorite part.
I'm in suspense too.
Yeah, your name is in the bag.
Is it okay?
It is. Yeah, you commented. Your name is in the bag.
For a small fee.
Okay.
Jeff, when are you going to attend NCT?
NCT?
That's
the
all.
the model club in Dallas.
Oh, you know?
IPS chapter. I can give you the date for the next one.
Okay.
All right.
But you know what? Let's make that happen. Because I would like to. Yes, I should. I'm sorry. I was watching. I'm embarrassed, but I will. Sign me up.
All right.
And I mean it. Just let me know. Well, after
I'll do that.
He can sign me up.
And the last one is someone is interested into what are the tank kits in the top corner of the cubbies behind Jeff.
The what? The tank?
The tanks. I'm assuming the ones on the top
corner of
shelf.
cubbies?
Oh,
Yeah.
this one here?
I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, one is the Hobby Boss. If you can take a look.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's hidden.
It's pretty
behind
heavy.
it.
It's a big tank.
Yeah. So one is the Hobby Boss King Tiger, the Henschel turret. Now it comes with Zimmerit, and honestly, this kit, it's a fantastic kit, and it's actually not expensive. If you think about it, I'm not sure about the manufacturer price. I mean the MSRP, but it's a very inexpensive kit considering what you get. So now I'm glad I took that off, because this kit was raffled off a few weeks ago and nobody claimed it. So if Ty Gooken is looking or is watching, Ty, this is yours. Please let us know where you live. Call our customer service department or send me an email with your address and we'll send this to you. But again, this is a very good kit if you're interested in King Tigers. The Hobby Boss is definitely one to go. The other one is just the Tacom kit. It's the Lee Tacom. It's actually the box only because I already messed with it. But I kept it just to have a little bit of interesting stuff, and it worked. It's,
I collect the boxes too.
Yeah,
I do. That's pretty exciting.
Tacom is one of those companies that has really nice box art. But it's the late Lee kit, the M3 Lee from Tacom. So that's it as far as questions.
Yeah, that's all
All right,
I've got here. So if we want to.
Okay, so last week, yeah, we told everybody that, well, we're not going to be asking any more questions anymore because whatever I come up with, you find the answer in no time. So whenever you leave a comment, like now, if you leave a positive comment, like I said, only positive comments, like how well you like me and how well you like Adam here. So for all the people that leave a comment in the beneath the Facebook thingy, whatever it is, they are eligible to participate in the raffle next week. But for last week's raffle, we have everybody who left a comment in the bag there, and also we're going to raffle off these 2 books. Whoever is the lucky winner, they have the Rust and Chipping and the Model Tips. Both are publications from Vallejo, and really worth all the money or the effort. It's a really, really nice book. So let's, Nicole, do your thing.
Get them nice and mixed up.
The famous bag.
Yeah,
We'll have
it is.
Adam make the drawing.
All right, we'll see how we go.
The innocent and
All
from
right.
Australia.
Thank you. I know
Now, if
nothing.
you draw your own name, then I can't
We'll
help
have to
it.
figure it out.
That would
I
be
think I've
funny.
got one.
That
That
would be
would be.
funny.
There we go. I
Just
got
one.
there.
All right. And his name is Adam No, it's Mark Saperstein or Saperstein or Saperston. Mark, if you're watching this, you're the lucky winner of these 2 books. Please, as usual, call our customer service with your address. Leave your contact me through the help desk with your name and address, and we'll get those books out to you as soon as possible. Again, Mark Saperstein, you are the lucky winner of these 2 books.
And it looks like he's actually watching.
Is
as
he
well.
watching?
Yes,
Okay,
he is.
there you go.
So there we go.
Just Mark, call our customer service, and we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. So for this week's raffle, we're just going to raffle off this kit, another Tacom kit, Lee. For the one that just asked it, you might be able to win this. Again, leave a comment, leave a positive comment, leave any comment. I'm just kidding. In the comment section, also maybe on YouTube. And everything okay? Did you disappear?
No,
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 it's
you're
still
you're
on?
good. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well.
There was a.
Anyway, so anyone who leaves a comment, they can you're eligible for next week's raffle, and you can win this nice 135th scale M3 Lee mid-production. And that was about it. I think I just have to first of all thank you for being here. Thank you for coming. We'll do this again someday. It was very interesting. Again, I could talk to you for half a day.
There's a lot of history there, right?
Yeah, a lot of history.
Right.
I call him my younger brother because a lot of the stuff that he said I could refer to, especially where we both come from a different part in the world, and going to the same stuff as a kid. So it's very interesting, and I think a lot of you guys will can associate with this. So other than that, I again subscribe please on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Tell your friends and families, and of course tomorrow is the last Saturday we have open our Christmas shop. It's the last time, so we'll stock it a little bit more. So if you're in the neighborhood, if you live in the Dallas area, please stop by from 9 to 3 o'clock, have some coffee, browse the store. And then other than that, also don't forget to go to our website at squadron.com. We still have a lot of stuff in the warehouse. So go there to see what's new and what's hot and what's coming. Other than that, I wish you all, in name of the Squadron team, I wish you all first of all, a belated Christmas, but a very merry, happy New Year for next year. May all your wishes come true, a lot of health. And again, we'll talk again next week, Friday, from at 12 o'clock Central. And this is for now. Jeff here and Adam Coleman saying goodbye and signing off.